Thank you for browsing page 121. Today we're going to jump into the World of Greyhawk folio as I celebrate the 44th anniversary of my Greyhawk campaign. I started my Greyhawk campaign in January of 1982. The only person who was present, who is still playing, is my wife Jerry. We were dating at the time, been together about 6 months. Pretty daunting to realize that I've been running Greyhawk since January of 1982, 44 years this month. I'm just surprised I'm still playing, honestly. When I first started playing D&D, I always thought it'd be one of those things that would fall by the wayside, or certainly after I got married and had kids, I would stop playing. But I haven't, and in the 44 years the campaign has run, I believe the longest time I had away from running a game from it is 4 weeks. And that would be right after I had COVID in 2020. And for weeks I was too sick to do much of anything. But even during the COVID lockdowns here in Illinois, I played D&D fairly often with my sons. So we kept the torch alive, if you will. So 44 years of Greyhawk goodness. And here we're going to take a look at the folio that started it all. This was published in 1980. And I purchased my copy in 81. And I had it for a few months before I ran it. We were running our own homebrew world at the time, and then I decided that it was time to kind of branch out into something published by TSR, and I picked the World of Greyhawk because it was the only thing around at the time. Forgotten Realms wouldn't come out until 87. So here we go. This is what you got for your $10 for the folio. You open it up. I'm going to go ahead and show the inside. There you go. We've got, it's a little listing of all the heraldry that's depicted on the outside. So all these shields, all this heraldry for all these different kingdoms is called out here, which is pretty good because I used a lot of that heraldry over the years. And then on the back as well. And then we got a nice little look at the map. This is the famous Darlene map. And then we get the key for the map itself right there. And then I have the map. This is not the one that's mounted that I show on the channel. This is the one that came with the folio. I have both pages of it. This is a nice looking map. Darlene did the artwork for it, and I think she did a really, really good job. So there you have it. That's page 1 and 2. I'm not going to show the map in its entirety, but I will go through the gazetteer. This is the meat of the book as far as what you could use to play the World of Greyhawk. And it was interesting because there's so little information in here, I had to still come up with a lot of stuff. And by January of 82, I've been reading Dragon Magazine for quite a while. And Gary Gygax would post updates to the World of Greyhawk in Dragon Magazine. So we would get news of what was going on and some army breakdowns, stuff like that. So there we have the page, or the first page rather, from 1980. And then the table of contents. And then we get the foreword by Gary Gygax, or Alan Hammock rather, February 6, 1979. So this was one of the first, or this was the first world I bought for any role-playing game. And I've always loved it. So we get the map, legend, and key. And then the names of the month, days of the week, chronology, and a brief history of Greyhawk, which was all new to me when I bought this guy. Continuing the history of Greyhawk, this shows the emigration of all the various races of Greyhawk and how they spread out into the rest of the Flanus. And we get a nice look there, a nice key to show us the key city-states that it's in, or countries. And then we get ancient and current languages, political divisions, and we get a breakdown now of all the various little countries depicted on the map. This was very useful. This thing came with me to every game for, boy, at least 4 or 5 years. The gold box came out in 83, but I still brought this with instead of the gold box set just because it was easier to transport and it had, the information was a little easier to go by, but I love the gold box. I just didn't carry that around that much. I used this instead. So here we go, continuing on our look at our various kingdoms. And That was the main beef of this particular thing. There we go. And like I said, Dragon Magazine had a lot of supplemental information from Sage Advice, I think was the... No, it wasn't Sage Advice. The Sorcerer's Scroll, I think, was Gygax's... his column at the time in Dragon Magazine, and he would give us updates on the world of Greyhawk in that. And then we get the geographical features, so this would be the various oceans and forests around Greyhawk, maybe a paragraph each, waiting for you to flesh it out. Hills and highlands, marshes and swamps, mountain ranges, and just a little line here, okay, for the Kuel River. I always thought, K-E-W River, Kuel. I always thought that was, hey, cool, man. A tributary of the Scheldamar, which divides the duchy from the county of Ulick. Or, I'm sorry, duchy from the county of Ulick. At our table, we always say duchy because it's funny, but it is actually duchy. It's just an old habit. And then the Rift Canyon. This was interesting because it tied in with White Plume Mountain. And then continuing out the Timberlands, nice look at an elf habitation. And then royal and noble precedents and general honorifics. How do you address the king? How do you address landed noble? It's all right here. And a glossary of portentous runes and glyphs. I use these a lot. I still use them occasionally, but I don't use them as much as I used to. But I would put these on dungeon doors and stuff, and I'd put the little death symbol, and I'd have this available so they could translate what I was talking about. That was a lot of fun. Good way to do puzzles. This kind of glyph writing, and of course there's many, many other samples of it in the real world. And then we get a nice little blurb for Gen Con itself, and then credits. Created and written by Gary Gygax. And the map is by Darlene Pecule. And I really like it. And then the last thing you got out of this was the World of Greyhawk Fantasy Figures by Minifigs. These were the early days of figures, lead figures. I don't know if I have any of these. And then the World of Greyhawk Fantasy Figures, another... Oh, this is page 1 of it. Sorry, that's page 2. So there you go. If you want your Amazon infantry, there you go. $3.98 for lead figures back in 1980-81. I was only making $3.50 an hour at the time. So this was pretty pricey. I realized they had to make money on it, but this represented an hour to an hour and a half's worth of work to get some of this stuff. I ended up not buying many of these figures. I started really buying the figures in later 82 and then throughout the rest of the 80s. Plus, as various people in our group dropped out, if they weren't going to play anymore because they were moving away or they just didn't want to play anymore, I would make a point to pick up their collections. A couple of guys just gave them to me. Said, here you go, I don't want these anymore. And other guys, I'd buy them, a whole set of different stuff for $10. And that's how I built up so many lead figures. So I actually have 2 or 3 collections worth of lead figures in my lead figures. So there you go. And there's the back. This is what we saw through the packaging. And I do remember this was $10. And I bought this at Models Hobby in Crestwood, Illinois. And Model, his first name was Doug. Doug went on to be the one that sponsored our club that I joined in 81, so right after I bought this. I would join the club that he was sponsoring in 81, and he would play in the local park district. And I played there for, I don't know, over 4 years, almost 5 years. It was a lot of fun. I really liked that club. I still miss it to this day. In fact, I met Craig gaming through the club. I actually knew Craig. He was a kid in my neighborhood, but he was much younger than I was, so I really didn't interact with him any. But once we met at the club, he played at my table, and we became friends, and he still games with us. Craig is the other one, other than my wife, who's been in my Greyhawk campaign the longest. And when I call it a campaign, it is actually a campaign. I have kept one cohesive history going of our Greyhawk from the start in 1982 through today, and there are many characters that started in the early 80s that are still gaming. In fact, last night we played, and my wife Jerry played her character that started in the world of Greyhawk. That's Ophelia, her magic user. And Craig played one of his oldest guys, Shade. So it was fun. It's fun to kind of go back and look at this stuff and then shake my head that it's been 44 years since I've started running Greyhawk. Now, in the late 80s, I did do a parallel campaign where I started with the Forgotten Realms. And I played in the Realms periodically throughout the 90s and primarily left it in early 2000s. But even when I was doing Forgotten Realms, I was doing the World of Greyhawk concurrently with it. So I also run Battletech, Silent Death, Gamma World, Traveler, you name it. I run a lot of other games. So we'll play D&D one week and then we'll play another game the next. So there are some gaps here and there, but not, like I say, I believe the longest I could remember, the one that is in my mind the longest, is 4 weeks, and that was in mid-2020, right around the time I got COVID, and I was laid up for weeks with it. And then when I started feeling a bit better, we started playing a little again. So it was, it's been interesting to have something like this in my life as long as I've had it. I've really, really enjoyed having it. I love that both my kids play in it. And we've had a good, stable group now for years, and I hope we have years to go. So there you go, just thumping my chest a little bit about playing a really old campaign of Greyhawk. Put your comments below. How long have your campaigns been going? Maybe there's campaigns out there that are longer than mine. That'd be great to hear about. I'd love to hear about it. So let me know. Also, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Tell your friends. Let's keep the channel growing. Also, take a look at the Patreon, see if you can help me out there. I've got a couple other tech things I want to get that'll improve the channel. I need a little cash for that, so if you want to help grow the channel, that'd be great. But that's all I've got today on page 121. I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.